Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon, and then I post it up on Facebook of the same name. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. If you feel you need a therapist, please go to Google, type in therapy, your city, Psychology Today will pop up, click on that, and it will have qualified therapists in your area. Also, the views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other damn therapist for that matter. Boom, shakalaka done. Okay, so I wanted to hit some more questions that I didn't get a chance to answer. All right, we avoid fog, fear, obligation, guilt. Then again, if inner critic is so intense and we always feel foggy guilt, how do we become aware of our hidden guilt running the show? It can prevent us from discerning. Okay, so anything that makes you feel guilty. So when you start feeling guilty, you know when you start feeling guilty. It's this, oh God, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, or I shouldn't have done that, or, you know, blah, 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 and I feel guilty, right? So you write it down and you confront it. And it's mindfulness. It's being mindful. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why are you making this decision? What is driving this decision? What, you know, is it really you? Or is it your fear? Is it your obligation? Or is it your guilt? So it's going to be a little bit of mindfulness. I would strongly suggest that if you're struggling with the guilt, get the DBT workbook and start working on mindfulness. You know, figure out, what are you thinking? Why are you thinking it? What's going on? What's driving it? You know, what's happening? So you're going to have to be your own detective, if that makes any sort of sense. So, when we are being driven by unconscious or subconscious things, it's usually when things go south and you want to start examining why. Who was making the decisions? Was it the inner child? Ooh, now there's another way to start working at the unconscious or the subconscious guilt. Inner Child Workbook by Catherine Taylor, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. These are all really good books to start kind of uncovering the unconscious and start working on what is really going on there. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of journaling. It's going to be a lot of detective work, self-discovery, like, okay, I made this decision. Ooh, it was really not a good decision. Why did I make that decision? Where did that come from? Who was running the show at that time? So CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, Inner Child Workbook by Catherine Taylor. I strongly recommend either or. Okay, what to do with this lockdown, making the escape possible. There's no physical abuse, but it's virtually impossible to prove that they're doing verbal abuse, etc. So in this lockdown, it is sad and scary for domestic violence targets because they are trapped at home with their abusers, whether their abusers are parental units or whether their abusers are a romantic relationship or a roommate situation or whatever. So in this lockdown, the best thing you can do is start planning your escape. What do you need? You know, what can you do? What do you need to do once the lockdown is over? What do you need to do once you can move away? What do you know, where do you need to go? So you start doing research. You know, it's like what women's shelters or men's shelters are around, what domestic violence advocacy groups are out there in your community that you can call upon for help, you know, that type of thing. Okay, there's no physical abuse and it's impossible to prove. So with the verbal abuse, unfortunately, it's like our system is so messed up. It doesn't really, how do I explain this? If it's, I know, I've started the sentence like 3 times. Let me try again. With children, okay, DCS, Department of Children's Services, doesn't really take into consider verbal abuse. And that's a shame because they should, because it's damaging the kid. What they care about is whether the kid is being physically abused, physically neglected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They don't care about the emotional part, which they should care about the emotional part, because when you don't care about the emotional part, this is when you have children that grow up to be like, you know, psycho killers, kiss casse. You know what I'm saying. So, yeah, it is very hard to prove, but really what it is that you start making your plans to get out. Get a safety plan together. Who are your trusted allies? Who can you call on? Who can you call on at a moment's notice that you can maybe go stay with? Or who are the advocacy people in your community? Who can you call on for help so that you can get out of said situation? Yes, the lockdown is making it very difficult, and if the abusers are watching your every move, you may not be able to do that. I would suggest that as soon as the libraries open up, go use the computers there. Of course, use hand sanitizers and make sure you're washing hands and all that sort of good stuff. But go use the libraries to use their computers to look up advocacy groups, shelters, things like that in your community. And during this time period, come up with a safety plan. Who can you call on? Who are your trusted family? Who are your trusted friends? Who can you rely on? And that may have to be a mental list, because if you're starting to write things out and you've got an abuser who's going through your stuff, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it up here. Do you see where I'm going with that? Or keep it someplace where they can't get into. So yeah, it is. It does. The domestic violence calls have gone through the roof. And I think Brent, my buddy who's the lawyer, he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be real busy for the next few months. There are so many domestic violence cases, and there's so many people calling me wanting divorces. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised, sadly. So, yeah, you figure out what you need to get safe and do run through a safety program in your head. It's like, okay, if this happens, I can go to this house, or if that happens, I can go to this house, or if this happens, I can call this friend, or whatever. And again, if you are locked down with an abuser, be very careful, because they have a tendency to go through computers and phones and et cetera, wanting to know your every move. So do be aware of that. Also be aware, and I'm going to talk more about this on Sunday, we're going to talk about stalkers, because boy, howdy, has that gone through the roof, along with all the domestic violence stuff. So they put tracking apps on your phones and your computers, or keystroke loggers or whatever. So you got to be aware of all that stuff. So yeah. So anyway, I hope that answers the question. And like I said, Sunday I'm going to go into more depth about that. I have borderline personality disorder. How do I not take it out on my boyfriend when I am triggered? I try at this every day because I refuse to be an abusive person, but I teeter on hating myself for it. Okay, so borderline is born of trauma. Okay, the behaviors that borderlines do comes from maladaptive behaviors in response to trauma. So really what you want to do is you want to start working on your trauma, your family of origin. Where did you learn all this stuff? Why did you learn all this stuff? Where did this come from? So here are some good books for borderline personality disorder. The Borderline Survival Guide by Chapman and Gratz. Really, really good. Number 2, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Why? Because you need to start addressing the original trauma. You need to start addressing the original wound. Whatever that was that caused the trauma, that caused the maladaptive behaviors that come with borderline. The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. People who love themselves do not rage. People who love themselves do not abuse. People who love themselves have got good boundaries, and people who love themselves are self-aware. Boom! There you go. Which is why it is an oxymoron when I hear people say, oh, self-aware narcissist. Wrong, incorrect response. There is no such critter. So, self-awareness comes from self-love. Self-love is self-esteem. Self-esteem is originally learned from our family of origin. Now, if our family of origin was dysfunctional, then we did not learn how to love ourselves, which is why we now need to learn to love ourselves. So with the borderline personality disorder, Chapman and Gratz, the Borderline Survival Guide, you want to work on self-esteem workbook by Glenn Schiraldi, and the CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, and the Inner Child Workbook by Catherine Taylor. So you want to start working on whatever that original trauma was. Get with a good trauma therapist. Get with a good DBT, dialectic behavioral therapist, okay? That's mindfulness. It's like westernized Buddhism, basically. It's mindfulness. It's just mindfulness. Why are you thinking this? Where did this come from? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and when we get triggered, it's really important to remember it's not about the other person. It's about us. So it's taking responsibility. So one of the things that happens with borderlines is the ego gets inflamed, right? It's threatened. You know, something's come in to threaten it. The trigger comes in to threaten it. And instead of going, whoa, where is this coming from? Why am I acting like that? They tend to lash out at everybody else because of the fear and the pain. So what you want to do is you want to hit that trigger head on, and instead of making it about somebody else, you got to be like, ooh, where did this come from? Why am I wanting to lash out? Who taught me to lash out? Where did this come from? This is not who I am. I'm not going to do this anymore. What is this bullshit? Where did this come from? So you start working on whys, wheres, hows, and then you start confronting it. It's like, I have a choice, and I am not going to take this out on anybody else. I'm going to figure out what this trigger is all about, and I will put the shame back on the person that it belongs to. So with trauma, we get shamed. We get a huge amount of shame thrown onto us. And with borderlines, that shame is so heavy that it feels life-threatening. And so they lash out at other people. Does not excuse it, certainly explains it. So, but what you want to do is, instead of lashing out at other people, you want to take that shame and put it back onto the original wound, the original person who harmed you, the original trauma, because that's really where it belongs, not with your boyfriend. It's not your boyfriend's fault. So you take that shame, that blame, that anger, whatever, and you put it back to where it really belongs. It's not yours either. I know, it's weird. So anyway, I hope that answers the question. Don't hate yourself. Change yourself. Work on those things. Get with a good therapist. There's also multiple workbooks for borderline personality disorder. Get those, start working them. If you cannot get to a DBT therapist, get the DBT workbook. Start working it. Couldn't hurt. All right. Okay. Is it okay to keep things that are dear and of importance to me kind of tucked away? Well, yeah, we all do. You know, I've got certain things from my grandmother that I keep in a special place, you know, and that's perfectly okay. It's really important if you are living in an abusive situation, because if you're living with an abuser, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go find the things that are important to you and destroy them. That includes pets. And I want to talk more about that on Sunday, because I want to talk about stalkers, I want to talk about dark triads, I want to talk about how to keep you and your pets safe when you are leaving. So there is that. Yeah, it's okay to keep things that are important to you and of importance tucked away, absolutely, in a safe place. You also want to make sure that if you are going to be leaving, that those things are out of harm's way, meaning you give them to somebody to keep safe for you, or you put them someplace where the abuser cannot get to them. So yeah, we all do that. We all have, you know, special little things for special people, you know, like, you know, pictures or whatever. And, you know, that's okay. I guess that's what that question is about. I hope that's what that question is about. If it's not, I am me, and I'll, you know, give me more details and then I can give you a better answer. Okay. From listening to your videos for 2 years and reading the books, it finally clicked to me that the people I live with are malignant narcissists with psychopathic traits or just plain out psychopaths. It's horrifying. They are mirroring all of the time and go through the idealize and then discard phase. None of what they did was ever real. As an adult child of narcissists, I'm quickly trying to leave this place alone. What advice do you have for someone in my situation as I prepare to leave and mourn the loss of what I thought they were? Whoa, okay, that's a big question, and that actually I'm probably going to address on Sunday, but I'll kind of answer it here. When you are preparing to leave, you cannot let them know. You cannot. Listen to me now, believe me later. You cannot let them know, because they'll sabotage it, because you're the greatest entertainment in town and they don't want their entertainment to leave. Hang on just a second. So when you are getting ready to leave, you make all of your plans off-site if you can. This is what I talked about earlier. It's like if you can get to a library. I don't even know if the libraries are open right now. I don't think they are. But when they open up and they have the ability to, you know, use the library computers, that's where you do your planning at, because otherwise your abuser might be having like keystroke loggers or trackers or, you know, that type of thing. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to play your cards close to your chest. You've got to let everybody who is a support system know that you want no contact with them once you do leave, and we're going to talk more about that on Sunday. If you are at a job, you also need to let your HR department know that you've got stalkers or you've got crazy family and that they may try to contact you at work and that you're not interested and you may need to file an order of protection. When you are mourning the loss of the family, because it's, you know, it's like we have to finally you know, it was, one of my clients finally had such a wonderful breakthrough, and it was wonderful to see, because for years the goal or the wish was that the parents would get normal. And finally they saw it was never going to happen, and that magic thinking just dropped like that. And it was the inner child stuff. And you have to grieve. You have to let the inner child know these people are never, not on this planet Earth or any other planet Earth, or any other planet for that matter, going to be normal. They're not ever going to be the loving, kind, wonderful Disney parents that you wished you'd had. And so you have to mourn them, because that is the deepest, dearest wish of every child, is to have a healthy, normal, loving, kind mom and dad, or two moms or two dads or whatever, you know, just loving parents. And the problem of it is that when the parents are narcissistic or psychopathic or dark triad or mentally ill in some way, shape, or form, they will never be the parents we need. And so you have to mourn that. You have to honor that. And that is where writing and burning letters comes in handy. And you do that after you have left. When you leave, and that was the other thing that my client and I were talking about, is that the healing really starts once you decide you're done. The healing really starts. I mean, it's kind of pre-contemplative and kind of there, but then when that moment comes where the, you know, the scales tip and you just kind of go, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. I don't deserve this. I'm not interested in this. I am done, and mean it. You know, then the healing starts. So when you're preparing to leave, you basically want to keep your cards close to your chest. You don't give them any clue. You get out as quickly and as quietly as possible, and you go no contact. That's the best way to do it. And I'm going to go into more in depth when I talk on Sunday about stalkers and cyber stalking and all of that sort of fun stuff. But as you prepare to leave, you're going to feel scared. You're going to feel elated. You're going to feel, it's funny because it's like you get this sense of freedom once you get away from them. And it's like, oh my God, I'm free. And then you're like, oh God, I'm free. What the fuck? It's kind of scary. So it's important to know that you're going to have a plethora of emotions. You're going to have all sorts of emotions, and they're all okay. They are all okay. You're going to feel a lot, and that's okay. Okay, so I think that answered that. There goes that one. Okay. Oh, good Lord, there's another whole, oh, I'm going to need to do more than one of these. Distress is gone after leaving a narcissistic relationship. How long does the emotional dysregulation last? Again, it can last up to 3 years. So why? Because we are dealing with the most diabolical mind abuse that you will ever face in your life. Narcissists love to get into our heads with an egg beater and scramble the circuits up there. That's what they do. So all of the gaslighting, all of the rewriting history, all of the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the name calling, the devaluing, the hoovering, the I love you, I love you, I love you, the love bombing, and then back to devaluing and this, that, and the other thing. It takes 3 years at least to unscramble all of that crap. It really does. And to really recognize there was nothing that you could have done to make it any better. Okay, let me just say that again. When you're dealing with an abuser, there is nothing on the face of this or any other planet that you could have done to make them change. I often hear people say, oh, well, but I don't want to leave because somebody else will get the best of them, and they'll be good with somebody else. Well, sweetheart, they're terrible with you. Why the hell would you want to stay? Nothing you do is gonna make a difference. They have shown you who they are. Believe them the first time. Get the hell out. You know, and that's hard because it's like we want to fix people. We want people to be healthy. We want people to be happy. We want people to be normal. We want people to live their best authentic life. Those people are never going to do that, and it's not our problem. So it can take up to 3 years because you're having to unscramble all of those circuits that the narcissist or the abuser has scrambled. Plus the fact when you're dealing with complicated grief, that too takes 3 years. So complicated grief is where we have that love-hate relationship, okay? It's complicated. It's complicated. So, you know, a normal grief, where there's a good relationship, the first year is the hardest because you're adjusting to all the new firsts, the first birthday without them, the first 4th of July, the first Labor Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, anniversaries, etc. You have to go through all those firsts, and that's the hardest year. It really is, because you're having to adjust to this new crazy normal without them in a healthy relationship. In an unhealthy relationship, you've got the complicated, I love you, I hate you, 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 love bomb, love bomb, love bomb, discard, 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 gaslighting, rewriting history, blah, 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 blah. So you're having to undo all of that crap, sort through all of these emotions, figure out what's real, what's not, and then you realize, oh my God, none of them was real. There was nothing, there is no there, holy shit. And then you realize that you're having to mourn the loss of something that didn't really exist. Mind-blowing. So yeah, it can take up to 3 years. So give yourself time. Time heals all wounds, and time wounds all heals. Because honestly, the better you get, the longer time goes on, the worse the abusers do. They don't get better, guys. They get worse. They absolutely get worse. I was just reading a Psychology Today article on narcissism, and they were finally, took them enough time, getting with the program and saying, oh, gee, narcissists don't get better. Duh. So, narcissistic traits, yes, because when teenagers, right? Teenagers are very self-centered, right? But they kind of grow out of that. But that's not narcissism. That's not the full flow, full-blown, all 5, all 9 in some cases, characteristics. So, but somebody who is a full-blown narcissist, no, they don't get better. They get worse. So it's going to take time. So you give yourself time, and you do self-care like a boss, and you do boundaries. The Disease to Please, Harriet Breaker, like a boss. Pia Melody's done some great books. There's lots of books on esteem and on boundaries. Read them. Really good. Okay. When trauma expertise comes late in life, can we learn how to have healthy relationships like a real friend, a real partner, a real mate? Is that possible? Yes. So listen to me now, believe me later. It is never too late. It is never too late. As long as there is breath in your body and you are willing to learn and you are willing to work on yourself, that's the key, then yeah, you can absolutely have healthy relationships. And it doesn't matter how old you are, because your picker will get fixed, and you will learn to trust your gut, and you will have good self-esteem. So you got that base to go from, and you're not just, rambling around going, please somebody love me, please somebody love me. It's like, no, I love myself. I want somebody that compliments me, not compliments me like, hey baby, you look good, but, compliments you like, hey, same likes, we enjoy each other, this is great, we have, companionship, whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship or whatever. So when you have good self-esteem, and I cannot stress this enough, when you have good self-esteem, when you fix your picker and you are no longer looking out here trying to fix this original wound, but you've dealt with this original wound, then yes, absolutely, you can and you will have healthy relationships no matter how old you are. So yeah, as long as there is breath in the body, you can do this. Okay, got that one done. All right. Okay, how much time do I have? About a few more minutes. My girlfriend has BPD and seems to be very aware of herself and ashamed of the disease. I watch her work on it with a therapist, but her nightmare disorder is very persistent. Any advice? DBT has to be DBT. I would recommend that you look at the DBT workbook as well. Read Stop Walking on Eggshells by Randy Krieger. So it kind of helps you deal with people you love that have got borderline. It's like how to de-escalate, how to stay gray rock or neutral or, whatever you need to do. So, yeah, you've got to know that this is her issue, not yours, and you can do things to not escalate. You can do things to, go, no, I'm not playing. Learn to walk away when it starts getting ridiculous, because that's what happens. Stop Walking on Eggshells by Randy Krieger. Read the DBT workbook. It'll help. And see if her therapist would allow you to come in and sit in on a session and maybe talk to that therapist about what can you do to help. So that would be one way to do it. Okay, let's see. Got that question. Okay. My ex was always the calm narcissist with snarky comments, which is passive aggressive. But a month ago, he had a screaming fit, calling me names, and almost got violent. He lost control. Do you know why it happened? Because he didn't get his way. That's what happens. And as time goes on, they're pushing the boundaries, pushing the boundaries, pushing the boundaries, trying to see how far you'll take their abuse. The second someone gets snarky, the second someone gets passive aggressive, that should be one of your deal breakers. It's like, I'm not tolerating snark. I'm not tolerating passive aggressive. Nope, not happening. So that should be one of your deal breakers. So they're pushing the boundaries. That's what they do. So yeah, they're doing that because they're trying to see how far they can go, and they're losing control. The more they lose control, the nastier and crazier they get. Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay. I am having the system. Okay, the system is not helping. What can I do? All right, so I'm going to talk more about this on Sunday because I do know that people are telling me that they've got restraining orders and it's not doing anything. And even though they're calling the police, it's kind of like a slap on the wrist. So here's my suggestion. The squeaky wheel gets oiled. You must speak up, meaning you must contact your state and local and federal representatives and say, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. You idiots need to do something to change the system. We need to have laws. We need to have this happening. We need to have that happening. This person is getting a slap on the wrist, and I'm putting you on notice now. If I end up dead, it is your fault. Seriously. So that's how you get things done, is you turn mouthy. That's what you do. So I'm going to talk more about that on Sunday because I want to talk more about restraining orders and the such. Why is the system so poor? Well, okay, let's take a look at a lot of judges and a lot of lawyers are, oh gosh, surprise, narcissists. So sometimes what ends up happening, and I've seen this happen in court before, where the judge is a complete whack job and recognizes another whack job, the one who's doing all the stalking and abusing, and instead of doing the right thing, they recognize themselves in the whack job, and then they decide to give them a slap on the wrist. Yay. So that's when you get vocal. You have to start speaking up. You have to go to your senator, your representatives, state, local, federal, whatever, and you start demanding change because that's the only way things change. So there that is. And we're going to talk more about that on Sunday. Okay, what kind of behaviors fall under the category of deviant sexual behaviors? Well, obviously pedophilia, that type of thing. The rest of them are pretty, as long as it's consensual, there's no problem. So, but pedophilia, no, not so much. So that's pretty much the big one. I hope that answered that question. Is it normal for an abuser to blame you for his problems with his daughter 12 years after separating? He also goes around from aggression to guilt trip to emotional blackmail and then back to apologizing. Yes, it is never their fault. So even if you only had contact with the child for like a week out of the year, I can guarantee you the narcissist, the abuser, will blame you for all of the child's bad behavior or problems or, the fact that the kid's not talking to them or, whatever. That's just the nature of narcissists. That's what they do. So yeah, that's absolutely what they do. And let me put it to you this way. My dad and his first wife divorced, 45 years divorced. They exchanged mail, like snail mail, because this was before email, snail mail, back and forth, blaming each other for the kids, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was crazy. Nancy and I were talking. We were like, they're crazy. And she's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, just wanted to check. So yeah, they're insane. They will blame somebody else for their bad parenting instead of taking responsibility and go, what's my part in this? They never do that. They never do that. They would much rather blame somebody else. All right, got to that one. All right. Okay, so somebody was asking me to do a video on spirituality and cults. I already did that, and not too long ago, actually. So if you're interested in looking at, before you ask me to do a video, guys, if you could pretty please go look through my videos. I've been doing this for, geez Louise, how many years now have I been doing? I've been doing this for a long damn time. More than likely, I've covered it, and I've probably covered it fairly recently within the last year. So look up communal narcissists if you're interested in cults. And that type of thing. So they were asking me to do one on cults. And I'm pretty sure I did one not too long ago. So check the videos and see if you can find it. It would be under communal narcissist. So a communal narcissist would be a Jim Jones, a Waco, Texas, David Koresh, that type of thing. Okay. Okay, I want to program myself to be able to bring healthy people into my life as I've had a life of best friend, narcissist boyfriends, etc. I was never allowed to have friends. What book of recommendations do you have? Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. You got to fix your picker. You got to fix your picker. I cannot say this enough. Until you fix the original wound, that picker, that internal child is always going to be the one in control. And that is always going to be the one that goes, oh, look, somebody who reminds me of my abuser. If I can make that person love me, I prove these yahoos wrong. Doesn't work. Half of a shit sandwich, half of a shit sandwich, total shit sandwich. So yeah, you definitely want to work on the inner child. So the Inner Child Workbook by Catherine Taylor, the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi, CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Get with a good trauma therapist. Get with a good trauma therapist. Figure out what all these people have in common. Who do they remind you of? Who do they remind you of? Who did you keep picking over and over and over again, and why? What were you trying to fix? The Disease to Please by Harriet Breaker. That's another one. Okay, unfortunately, I'm at the half hour, and I am running out of time, so I'm going to call it good for today. I still have more questions on here that I did not get to. Whew. So this weekend, I will be talking about cyber stalking. I'm going to be talking about what you can and what you should not do when you're leaving and how to keep yourself safe. Okay, guys, that is it. Have a great week, and I will talk to you on Sunday. Bye.